From the crossroads of the Ozarks, this is PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we are delighted to have you joining us for this crazy time. We are now in a period of life where we're prone to get off topic. So regardless of what the title of this episode is, there's no guarantee it's going to go there for the entire however long it is.
Yeah. And
A, we work in Gilbert time, which, it's who knows what that is. But B, there are bunnies a-popping, and it's just amplified
and
because we are now in the year of the rabbit.
So even though the title of this show will be decided on after the program, there's still no guarantee that the show will be related to the title in any way.
None whatsoever. Well, you are, you're listening to this podcast because you're one of those folks who questions the official story. You want to know, you want to dig deeper and find out what's really going on in the world. And of course, the big story the last week has been at Davos.
Not
Davros.
No, that's the Doctor Who universe, yeah. But it's still pretty evil.
It's pretty evil, and I'm thinking Davos is pretty close to it, actually.
Yeah, you got a guy with a shaved head who looks like Central Casting's idea of a Bond villain.
Pretty sure he's got a cat that he's just sitting there, saying, I'm going to take over the world.
And he speaks with a German accent.
Oh, no.
He's German, of course.
Nobody German could be
Austrian.
Nobody German could want to take over the world.
No Austrian has ever had this idea.
Ever wanted to take over the world.
My. Well, yeah. It's easy to look at this and get really, really frustrated, and we will probably get, I will probably
I will try to bring you in off the ledge.
But it's key to remember that these fools think they're winning. We step back and look big picture. There's a bigger agenda at work here, and these fellows, men and women, don't realize that they are useful idiots to the principalities and powers behind the scenes.
I think that's kind of sad.
It truly is. It's like when Paul wrote, if Christ is not raised and we are still in our sins, and we of all are most to be pitied. Mm-hmm. That, when you flip that on its head, it actually is a good descriptor of the description of those who are these globalists who gathered in Davos this week.
Oh, yes.
Because they think they're operating under a delusion that they actually will control the ultimate destiny of the world. They want to live forever. That's their fourth industrial revolution. That's a key aspect of their great reset. There's a new narrative, by the way.
Before you get into that, may I read something?
Sure.
Just a reminder, Psalm 2.
Psalm 2, yes.
Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against Yahweh and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. Mm-hmm. The Lord shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath and vex them in his sore displeasure. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. Yahweh hath said unto me, thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings. Be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve Yahweh with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are they that put their trust in him. The Lord's known before he ever created the earth that we would now be in this point of history.
Yep.
He knew that they would be meeting together at Davos, and all of their climate agenda and preparing for pandemics and trying to erase borders. He's laughing with derision, but the day is coming very soon when his wrath will be kindled against them.
He will speak to them in his wrath. He will terrify them.
He will.
Yes. Yeah, it's that's the thing to remember as we get really worked up about these plans to tell us how we're supposed to live. Just remember, the first century church changed the world, literally changed the world, while living under the dictates of the Roman Empire, the most powerful central government on the planet at that time. Although the Parthians might have argued that, but I digress.
But they were under the yoke of Rome.
They were under the yoke of Rome. And yeah, the early Chinese kingdoms might have argued that too. But again, since they never went head to head, we don't know for sure. Anyway, yeah, they were able to bunnies everywhere. They did not go forth and say, look, this is an illegitimate government. It's not representative of the people. We need to elect the Roman Senate. No, they witnessed 1-to-1. And that's what we need to do rather than focusing and getting caught up in the political game. Yeah, let's be aware of what the plans are, but let's also be aware that there's a bigger agenda at work here. And the World Economic Forum, whether the participants in it realize it or not, as I said, they are useful idiots for the principalities and powers behind the scenes who are pushing a fundamentally anti-human agenda.
Yes. You and I talked about this morning, the AHA, the aha agenda, the aha moment that these individuals are taking the world to. They believe that somehow the world is going to flip into what has been called the reset, the Great Reset, but they're calling it something else now. Yeah,
I've been trying to find that while we've been talking here because they figured out, and I saw this in a headline, the BBC News a year ago. What is the Great Reset and how has it been hijacked by conspiracy theorists? So, well, it's not really a conspiracy theory. If you can go to the World Economic Forum website and see that they really do want us to own nothing and be happy and eat insects instead of protein.
They proudly proclaim it.
Right. It's not a conspiracy. I mean, well, it is a conspiracy, but it's not a theory. It's right there on their website, but they're changing the term. I know Klaus Schwab's follow-up book to his Great Reset is called The Great Narrative, but I don't think that's what they're calling their new plan. It was like the new system or the new model or something. Like Cromwell had that, the New Model Army, 400 years ago. So nothing new under the sun. It fundamentally, I think that their motto really should be, and this is the subtitle of my presentation for the upcoming Skywatch TV virtual conference, Build Back Babel.
Yes.
That's really what it is.
Yeah,
it's building back Babel.
It is. In fact, you and I, if you live in our area in Southwest Missouri or in Arkansas, or if you're planning on visiting Branson on the is it
first week of February?
First week of February, February 2nd, Groundhog Day. That's easy to remember, Groundhog Day. We're going to be in Blue Eye, Missouri at Morningside, which is the ministry for the Jim Baker Show, and we're going to be on the panel talking to Jim and Lori and Mondo probably, and perhaps Sue and some of the others. But we're going to be discussing this very topic, the Great Reset, and what it really means for Christians.
It is, the more I study their plans, and I don't profess to be expert on this, I would refer you to like Patrick Wood and his excellent website, technocracy.news.
Yes.
And his book, Technocracy Rising, back in 2014. He was way ahead of the curve on this, but he's been studying technocracy and shows how this goes all the way back to the 1930s. This is not a new initiative. This is just the latest initiative, the one that's got the most traction. It really is a desire to rebuild the world's first would-be empire, the empire of Nimrod, which was the city-state of Uruk. The Bible spells it E-R-E-C-H, but it's Iraq. It's the same thing today. And that civilization was based on cities where workers, serfs, peasants would go out from the cities, work in the fields, and come back home every day. They would get their daily allotment of gruel or barley in a little crudely made bowl that they would just throw away. I mean, archaeologists find dump sites with hundreds and thousands of these bowls.
Why, that sounds like a day's wages for a loaf of bread.
Yes, exactly. Or universal basic income.
Yeah.
You could call it that as well. that's essentially what they want to bring us back into. They're trying to push us out of rural areas, which is the only way some of these initiatives can work. By 2030, we'll own nothing. Everything that we need, we'll rent, and it will be delivered to us by drones. Really, you're going to do that in, say, the Ozarks, but Wyoming or Montana? It's not going to work.
No.
But if you push everybody into cities, and they want us all in what they call 15-minute cities, where everything is just a short walk away. Okay.
They've even got a graphic in a PDF that was released, a booklet that was released several years ago when you and I were first writing for Tom Hornbook about this. It showed all of these it looked like something from the 1950s. Mm-hmm. All of these happy people, colorful, beautiful, landscape of the city in the background. And the sky was as blue as anything. It looked like something a child had drawn. But the individuals are walking or biking. There was not one car in that picture. Mm-hmm. And everybody was going to work.
Yeah.
In other words, serfdom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's...
But everybody was happy.
Everybody was happy.
Happy serfs.
Yeah. You have no say in how my life has been planned, and that freedom from that responsibility, it just made me so happy. I can
so
be
much happier.
So creative. I'm writing music, and I'm painting, and I'm sculpting with all this extra free time I have now, thanks to the artificial intelligence and the robots that are doing all the work for us.
Yeah. Yeah, but who's raising the food?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that we're eating bugs.
Yeah, because you can, farm crickets a lot cheaper and with a lower carbon footprint than you can cattle. Human body's not designed to process chitin.
No.
Exoskeleton.
I read an interesting piece this morning talking about the carbon footprint and the whole idea of carbon footprint. That's ridiculous. It's a carbon-based world.
Yes.
At what point is carbon illegal?
Here in the American Midwest, we call carbon dioxide plant food.
Yes, exactly. Well, anyway, the idea that vegetarians or vegans somehow have a much lower carbon footprint than a meat eater. The fact is that is offset by all of the other things that the vegan or vegetarian is purchasing.
Right.
Because you cannot buy things in this day and age without having access to the internet, using drone deliveries. I mean, this is where the Klaus Schwab sees it going, that you're sitting at home or you've walked to work and you have everything you need delivered to you by these drones. All of that takes energy. Mm-hmm. The internet that you live on as both product and consumer takes energy. So what's going to power all this? The sun can't do it.
No, we were talking about that this morning too. Uh-huh.
We were doing a PID radio off PID.
Yeah, it was from the couch instead of here in the back bedroom.
That's our next show from the couch.
We just need wireless mics and we'll be good to go.
Just put them in our heads.
That's it. Yes, implants.
No,
that's the future.
No, thanks.
This short-lived effort by the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission to ban new gas-powered stoves, natural gas stoves. Natural gas as a cooking source, as a source of cooking energy, is really preferred. I mean, if we lived in an area where we had access to natural gas, we'd have a gas stove.
Yeah. I love cooking with gas, and most chefs do too.
Yeah, but we live out in a rural area where you don't have natural gas lines run to us. Now, we could put in a propane tank and have a propane stove if we wanted to, but okay, we'll just go with the electric stove. But this attracted a lot of attention. It got a lot of ridicule in the conservative media. Republican lawmakers lampooned it, and so the U.S. Consumer Product Safety, CPSC, backed out and said, okay, no, we're not going to do that. But the fact remains that in California, they plan to ban not just gas stoves, but gas furnaces and gas water heaters, natural gas-powered water heaters by 2030. In the state of New York, our other main source of electors for the Electoral College, Governor Hochul is backing a proposal to do away with gas-powered water heaters. And this is based on a flawed study released in December, allegedly peer-reviewed. And even if it is peer-reviewed, it doesn't necessarily mean it's good science.
No, it doesn't.
By an organization that was funded by the World Economic Forum to show that about 12 or 13% of childhood asthma is directly due to fumes emitted by gas stoves. And so we need to get rid of gas stoves. Like, okay, all right. So it'll be better to replace those with electric stoves, electric water heaters, electric furnaces that are powered by coal, natural gas, petroleum in some cases. 60% of American electricity is generated by coal or natural gas. Mm-hmm. You got another 20% generated by nuclear power.
What about the people who work in the gas-powered power plants?
Yeah.
Aren't they subject to getting asthma?
You would think so. What about the people living downwind from those gas-powered power
Exactly.
plants? Oh, my. Well, we better everybody convert over to solar.
What about those people who live in states where those pipelines are going through with liquid natural gas?
Liquefied natural gas. Well, they're trying to shut all those down. And yet we're sending these LNG tankers to Europe to
That's just it.
make up for the pipelines that got blowed up in the Baltic Sea.
In fact, there's a big brouhaha about that. Europe not happy with the United States because Biden is selling so much of our LNG to Europe.
Mm-hmm. And it's at a higher price, of course, than what they were paying the Russians for what was coming through Nord Stream 1 and would have come through Nord Stream 2. But both of those have now been essentially ruined thanks to the insides of those pipelines are not designed to come in contact with salt water, which they have because of the holes that got blown into them.
Is this gaslighting?
The climate alarmists.
Really, with gas.
Yeah, climate.
Which was the source of the term, if you've never seen the film.
Yes. Climate alarmists. And Al Gore, by the way, gave an epic performance at the World Economic Forum this week, ranting and raving about 1 billion migrants forced to flee their countries because of climate change and Arctic cyclones and rain bombs, and we're going to lose the ability to self-govern. It's like, okay, so the solution here is that we give up the ability to self-govern to the World Economic Forum so that you all can tell us how much energy we're supposed to use, which gets back to Patrick Wood and technocracy and the idea of a carbon currency that we would all, instead of getting our daily allowance or our universal basic income, we would get so many carbon credits.
Yes.
Which again goes back to a proposal from the 1930s based on how much energy we're allowed to use, which according to a German scientist last week is about a quarter of what we Americans use.
Allow me to read from a World Economic Forum publication. This is part of their global risks document that you can get at their website. And we'll put a link in the show notes if you want to see it. Mm-hmm. But they've got 2 years out and 10 years out, the big things top 10, you have to worry about. Their speakers took talking points from this document. In the next 10 years, we have to worry about failure to mitigate climate change. That's number one. Mm-hmm. Failure of climate change adaptation. Same thing. Uh-huh. Natural disasters and extreme weather events. Climate change. Biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse. That's climate change.
This is like a high school kid trying to fill out a word count on his essay.
Isn't it?
The change of climate. Climate that is changing.
Number 5 is Al Gore's topic. Large-scale involuntary migration.
Uh-huh. Caused by climate change.
Yes. Number 6, natural resource crises. Climate change. Number 7, erosion of social cohesion and societal polarization, which will probably be caused by climate change. Widespread cybercrime and cyber insecurity, because people are unhappy, they have no money, and they own nothing, but for some reason are still unhappy. Therefore, it is caused by climate change. Number 9, geoeconomic confrontation.
Geoeconomic.
Confrontation. Now, isn't that an interesting
Not geopolitical, geoeconomic?
Geoeconomic confrontation. In other words, war caused by economic crises.
You know, in a way, we're already seeing that. We'll talk about that in a minute, how the United States has tried to use its economic power to...
But let's round it out with number 10, large-scale environmental damage incidents caused by climate change. Very good.
And there we
girls.
go. Yes. So 8 out of 10 climate change.
Yes.
But you called this a couple of years ago on Sci Friday. It's because you started very early researching the World Economic Forum's website.
Because I was writing something for Tom Horn, exactly.
Right. And pointed out that they're using the pandemic right now to frighten people into demanding a global governance. We must have greater vaccine uptake.
Yes.
And once the COVID pandemic passed, then it'll be back to climate change. And that is exactly what is happening.
Klaus Schwab said years ago that the two main drivers that would drive us toward the Great Reset are pandemic and climate change. That's exactly what that organization has. Their little peeps around the world all saying, all of the media that are part of that organization, they're all stressing pandemic and climate change. Well, I am saying now there will be another pandemic, and it may be influenza.
And this is something you've been tracking for a long time. And this is not to say that this will be a deliberate pandemic. Sharon has been watching emerging diseases since we first started down this road. In fact, our first interview on PID Radio back in 2005 was Dr. Henry Nyman of Recombinomics,
yes,
which looks at a company. His expertise is in how viruses recombine genetic material to form new strains, sometimes more virulent. So this is something you've been watching for a long time. It doesn't mean when we say there'll be a new pandemic that it means it's going to be deliberately released. We're not going that way. That's not where we're going with this at all.
I have no idea if it will be deliberate or not, but I think that the idea of using a pandemic, even if it is just saying it exists, will drive the next move towards the Great Reset for Klaus Schwab. Because we're seeing highly pathogenic avian influenza all over the world has been going on for the last few years. H5N1 is the primary agent behind this. And because of that, many birds have gotten sick and died, and many, many more. Millions of birds have been culled. They've been killed, even though they're healthy, because they've been exposed to a next-door farm or whatever that may have had a dead or diseased bird. Because of that, we're seeing various governments that are starting to, I kid you not, use gain-of-function research. And we're seeing that in the news too. And it's being spun as, why are we doing gain-of-function research when we're not supposed to be doing that? Because that may have contributed to the release of COVID. But gain-of-function research is where you say, oh, that disease it's moving through birds, and it's really deadly. The few cases of human H5N1 have been very severe. It is not passed from human to human yet. But it wouldn't take... In fact, there was a story that I read just a couple of days ago. I tweeted it. So if you're not following me on Twitter, you're missing a lot of stories. But it had to do with scientists who took a look at it, and I think it was only 2 mutations away from spreading human-human. 2 mutations.
This was the basis for your novel, The Armageddon Strain, which was published 20 years ago.
Yes.
And it is plausible. I mean, this is the kind of thing that science fiction authors, Michael Crichton, with the Andromeda Strain, although he was postulating some space bug or whatever, have used as a plot device for a long time. And when we see organizations wargaming a response to a pandemic, it doesn't necessarily follow that they're actually planning one. No. I actually am glad to see bureaucrats and government agencies trying to figure out, okay, how should we respond when something like this happens? Although it was interesting that the tabletop exercises that they ran prior to the pandemic, that they didn't do what they said they learned from the tabletop exercise.
No, they didn't. Not at all. And in fact, in the tabletop exercise, they talked about how a previous exercise had failed and they're going to do better than this one.
Mm-hmm.
But we saw what actually happened was not following we know to do this, this, and this. It
Right.
seemed like panic.
It did. And there were those who certainly profited from it. And I would like to think that was the motive behind this, because even though that's evil, it's certainly a better alternative than speculating other reasons for the responses that were given. But we should have learned from 100 years ago, the great influenza of 1918, 1919, the Spanish flu, that masking and lockdowns, that non-pharmaceutical interventions generally, well, no, not generally, they just don't work. And now there's peer-reviewed research. Stanford did a study that showed that it doesn't work. When you compared areas that locked down totally to other areas where people were just asked to voluntarily reduce travel, social distance, whatever, there was no difference at all in the spread of the virus.
No, not at all. I'm sorry, my eyes been down because I've been trying to find my Amazon app to watch video, because don't see, there it is. I wanted to see the title of a documentary that I watched, and I can't remember if you watched it as well. I think you did. That has been removed from the streaming. World War III Inside the War Room.
The BBC?
BBC Select.
Right.
And we watched it, and within days, it was gone. It was shortly, you and I watched it shortly after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And we wanted to see what NATO had war gamed, because that's what this documentary is all about. You cannot get it. It's not available on DVD, at least here in the United States. You cannot get it. And I think that's intentional. I think somebody said, we've got to pull this down, because it looked at the possibility of a limited nuclear strike in the Baltic on a U.S. ship.
Yeah.
And how NATO would respond to that.
And essentially was, well,
okay, we don't really make it any worse. He'll be mad at us.
Yeah, yeah.
They weenied out. They were just too weenie to say, we're going to stand up and respond. Now, that being said, how do you respond to a tactical nuclear strike?
That's a battlefield nuke, in other words, one that's a limited yield, intended to be used on the battlefield, not a strategic nuclear weapon that was intended to destroy Moscow or New York or Washington, D.C.
Right, fine-tuning your nuclear strike.
Right, which the Russians have tactical nukes in their arsenal, and they're...
As do we.
The Russians are ahead of us in that regard.
I realize that, but the stuff that I've been reading at Breaking Defense, we have it too.
Okay, and the Russians, though, in their published strategic policies, make no bones of being willing to use those if they feel that Russia is threatened, or at least if they can plausibly claim that Russia has been threatened. I mean, any war is as much a war of information as anything else. So where will all of this go? And obviously, the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, NATO and Russia, because Ukraine and Russia both admit now that this is a proxy war.
It has been from the very beginning. And that's, I think, one reason that Zelensky is so angry that he can't get NATO nations to pony up, because he realizes it's actually a NATO war. Right.
And while NATO nations are supplying some weapons, it's Ukrainians who are dying.
And as of this day, as of this moment, Germany is still refusing to send their Leopard tanks.
Yeah. And, likewise, the United States has not agreed to send the M1 Abrams main battle tank either. We just announced this week a $2.9 billion package of arms for Ukraine, which now... Total aid that we've sent to Ukraine is over $100 billion at this point.
Yeah, but there is I think the opinion in Congress is starting to shift away from support to we need to keep our own material at home.
Yeah, there was a story this past week that kind of illustrates some stories that I've been seeing very quietly in it's not the corporate media. You don't see this in the Times or the Washington Post, New York Times, Washington Post, but some other journals that track military readiness and military stories, pointing out that we're depleting our resources when it comes to things like, say, the Patriot missile batteries that we sent to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. We're actually pulling those out of the UAE, and we're going to send new ones to the UAE.
The HIMARS. The
HIMARS system, right. And in order to supply Ukraine with the artillery shells that it needs, 155 millimeter shells, the U.S. is dipping into a previously undisclosed or unreported on stash of munitions in Israel. Yeah. We're dipping into this stockpile, which was not previously known or widely reported, to supply Ukraine. And this is stocked in Israel for the United States to use in the event of a Middle Eastern war, and for the Israelis to use in an emergency.
Now, that's what's really interesting, because one of the stories I saw this morning had to do with Russia, maybe it was yesterday, Russia congratulating Israel on not participating in the Ukraine war.
And this is something that the Ukrainians have been very upset about. Zelensky would love for Israel to send some of its high-tech Iron Dome, for example. Would love to get its hands on the Iron Dome anti-missile system. But Israel is in a delicate position because Israel pretty regularly, once or twice a month, launches an airstrike into Syria to hit military positions, usually Iranian or Iranian-backed militia, but sometimes Syrian positions too, sometimes pretty close to Damascus, like the international airport. They can only do this because the Russians turn a blind eye. Russia is in Syria at the invitation of President Assad. And if Russia decided to enforce, a no-fly zone, for example, the Israelis would suddenly find themselves in a very difficult situation. So they don't want to make the Kremlin angry. And so their aid to Ukraine has been just humanitarian to this point.
I think another difficulty for Israel, well, first of all, they're a tiny nation that's surrounded by enemies, but Saudi Arabia is sort of on again, off again friend. And Saudi Arabia, aren't they thinking about joining BRICS?
Yeah, that's the other thing too. And actually, that's a subject we could take up the second half of the show, because there's a lot involved there. So let's take a break, and we'll come back. We'll talk about BRICS Plus and how this may redraw the world economic map when PID Radio continues. You have blessed us with your support during our first year in ministry. You literally make it possible for us to do what we do. And so as we prepare to head into a new year, we want to return the blessing to you. Through January, we've prepared a number of special offers at the Gilbert House store, and we're featuring the Red Wing Saga, Sharon's wonderful series of supernatural thrillers that teaches spiritual warfare through masterful storytelling with fascinating historical mysteries as the backdrop. Now, all 8 novels in the Red Wing Saga, a $160 value, can be yours for just $110, a savings of $50. You'll also find the Derek Gilbert collection, all 5 of my nonfiction books, a $100 value for just $70. Those are just 2 of the special offers available through January at our online store. You'll find it at gilberthouse.org/store. And as always, we thank you for your prayers and your support. Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we want to remind you of a couple of things. One is that we are going to Israel this year in March, and if you're not already on that list, then this may be your last week to sign up, because the travel agency, Lipkin Tours, needs to reserve rooms for you at the hotels, needs to make sure you have a seat on that third bus, which is filling up rapidly. So go to gilberthouse.org/travel, and you can find all the information there. Now, if you're sitting there saying, I want to go this year, but I can't, we're going there next year.
Right. And we will announce dates and special guest in the weeks ahead, probably after we get back from...
There's a special guest, so you're going to want to know.
We'll announce that in April.
We will. But also we want to remind you that, we're going to be down at Blue Eye on February 2nd. So if you're in the area, please come and sit in the audience. We'd love to see you and maybe have a chance to chat with you. But also we want to thank you for participating in our website. Those of you who've gone there, and even if all you've done is just take a look around, we really appreciate that. Some of you have been kind enough to put things in your cart and actually check out. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, because what little we met, because we don't really charge a whole lot extra by the time you figure shipping and handling, but also a lot of other things that go into the cost. We make a little bit on every purchase. So every time you buy there, we sign the books, those that we've written. I could sign those, Tom Horn books. I've actually helped to write a lot of those books.
That is true.
Which is why they're in our store. But thank you for purchasing there. We really appreciate it. And if you've donated to Gilbert House, we really want to thank you for that, because all of that goes to help us pay the bills and keep us going. And if you like PID radio, which we've been just delighted to bring back to you. Mm-hmm. If you like that, let us know. Let us know what it is you like about PID Radio, what guests you would like us to interview in the future, because in the past almost 18 years, mm-hmm. we have interviewed a lot of folks that are well known to you, and some of them have passed on to glory already. So we won't have a chance to interview them again in this lifetime. But you know what? Derek and I are talking about getting PID swag.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I need a PID cap.
Me too. We used to have them. And
PID coffee mug. I know. Had one of those too, and it's
we did.
awesome.
We had travel mugs and coffee mugs. So we're if you think that you would find that something that would make you happy and would make us happy, mm-hmm. and again, we wouldn't charge a whole lot for them. It may mainly just cover our costs. But we would love for you to have a PID Radio hat or a PID Radio mug or whatever. Or if you'd prefer to have say, Unraveling Revelation.
Oh, yeah.
Just let us know, and you can send the emails to...
we've got a contact form at the website, gilberthouse.org. We've also got one at pidradio.com. And you just follow the contact information at either of those websites.
Can they comment to this... YouTube video? Or
sure, yeah.
That's another way you can do it. And Derek keeps an eye on all of that stuff. He is, you're amazing. I don't know how you do all the things you do in a day.
Lots and lots of coffee. That's why we have an espresso next to a Keurig.
Oh, yeah.
I'll have one of each, please. No, yes. I'll put them both in the same mug. Oh. So do check that out. And speaking of going back 18 years now, we're putting archives of PID Radio available at our free app. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have our app yet, do take advantage of that, because some of the old interviews there help really shed light on what's going on now. In fact, I did an interview on View from the Bunker, which is my interview podcast with Patrick M. Wood, the author of Technocracy Rising, back in 2015. And that is available now at the View from the Bunker. I think I'm not sure where the classic. Anyway,
we'll find it.
We got classic VFTB, classic PID Radio. We're slowly working our way through those archives. We're up to 2009 in the PID.
Are those
archives.
searchable?
They are searchable, yes. And whenever there's a guest, the guest's name appears, so you can search by guest. What's really cool? Love the developers who've done this. By the way, Subsplash, Christian company. This app was really intended for churches to reach out to their congregations, but we figured out how to use this for our media outreach. You can search by connected Bible verses. Oh. So when we do a program on Unraveling Revelation, I'll tag it with the appropriate verses, and then you can see at the bottom of the other studies we've done, our Bible studies, that overlap. Mm-hmm. So it's really a well done app. So you do take advantage of that, because all of our content is there. Plus you've got the Bible module with multiple translations, even audio Bible, it will read it to you. So much going on there. And also, when you go to the website, gilberthouse.org and pidradio.com, I'll add a tab there as well. In the menu bar of the website, we're adding streaming video. So you can take advantage of some of the presentations that we've created over the past 10 years that are now available online for as little as $3.
Yeah, that's really nice, because if we were to put all of them on a DVD, it would mean more storage in our little teeny tiny shipping room. But even if we had all that, if you live in New Zealand, it's going to cost you a lot to have it shipped. So
Right.
just stream it.
And if you live in the UK, then you got value-added tax to ship the DVD in, and then we got to fill out customs documents for the shipping. So we're taking some of the DVDs that we've done. We're also breaking those down so you can just access individual teachings if you want. If you don't want to get the whole 6 hours worth, just want one of those teachings, we'll make them available a la carte. So,
but the bottom line is, if you don't have money, our app is free.
Right.
And
we're
just
trying to
about
make
everything we do is on that app.
That is correct. So all of our Unraveling Revelation programs now, 170 episodes available there. View from the Bunker. And between that and Gilbert House, our Gilbert House Fellowship Bible Study, when you go to our Spreaker website, and we're in the process of trying to get all of those moved over to the app as well. But we've got over 2,100 programs we've done over the last 18 years.
Oh my gosh.
So, and it's all of those programs are available online for free.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for visiting, and check it out.
Yes. So we were talking about BRICS Plus.
Yes.
BRICS is an acronym, stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. But they are looking to expand, and in 2023, it is likely that Saudi Arabia will become a member of BRICS Plus. You'll also see, very likely, Argentina, perhaps Algeria, that's been mentioned. Egypt is showing interest. Turkey is expressing an interest as well. Why is this relevant? Well, between Russia and Iran, who is also interested in this new union, economic union, you've got about 40% of the world's proven oil reserves. When you add the Saudis in there, it's over half of the world's proven oil reserves.
Right.
India, notably, which is on track to become the world's largest population very, very soon, if it's not already. We just learned this past week China's population began to fall for the first time in a long, long time. India is importing a massive amount of Russian oil, as are the Chinese. So the sanctions against Russia for its oil exports, the exports that it lost to the European Union,
right,
more than being made up for by the Indians and the Chinese. And in fact, the Indians and the Chinese India especially, is processing Russian oil into refined petroleum products, turning around and reselling it back to Europe at a huge markup. So, it's like sanctions. What sanctions? There ain't no sanctions. This is one fact to remember. Fact number 2, one of the key takeaways from the World Economic Forum meeting this past week in Davos, Saudi Finance Minister Mohammed El Jadaan, in a panel on Saudi Arabia's transformation, made it clear that the Saudis will consider trading their oil in currencies other than the United States dollar.
Yes, I did see that. That's been pitched for a long time, getting off the petrodollar.
Right. And that's really been what has supported the United States dollar as the world's reserve currency. Mm-hmm. OPEC, led by the Saudis, have insisted on selling its oil in United States dollars. So other nations had to keep foreign currency reserves in U.S. dollars in order to buy the oil that they need from places like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Nigeria, Venezuela. Venezuela, by the way, has far more proven oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. Venezuela is number 1 in the world. Mm-hmm. So the Saudis saying, we think we'll be willing to take the yuan, China's currency, or perhaps rubles or some other thing. This is a really big deal.
It's a huge deal.
The United States currency has been decoupled from gold since 1972. And what has kept its value high is the fact that countries need to keep dollars in their bank accounts to buy oil. Mm-hmm. If that changes, if the Saudis are willing to say, okay, we'll take yuan, or, and this is the other thing, a Russian economist by the name of Sergei Glazyev, who is the macroeconomics minister for the Eurasian Economic Union, the EAEU, which is essentially Russia and the Stans plus Armenia, is working on developing a gold-backed digital currency. Mm-hmm. Now, will they make this happen? Don't know. There are a lot of moving pieces involved here. But if they do, this could really be a game changer. Yes,
I'm
Mrs.
raising
G.
my hand because you talked about gold-backed currencies, digital or otherwise. Did you know that prior to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, that Great Britain was the primary purchaser of Russian gold?
Yeah.
It is now becoming China as the primary purchaser of Russian gold.
Mm-hmm.
So the gold reserves will be changing ownership.
Mm-hmm. And there are some questions about where Russia's gold is. Sergei Lavrov made a comment earlier this year that it is long past time for us to. I'm paraphrasing what he says, but long past time for Russia to kind of insulate itself from the kind of sanctions that the United States and NATO has imposed on Russia over the last, ever since 2014, we started getting into the Maidan Revolution, where the Russian-backed president of Ukraine was booted out in favor of, was it Petro Poroshenko, who was the Western-backed president. There have been sanctions put on Russia's economy, and that included the freezing, especially since the invasion of Ukraine last February, the freezing of Russian assets held in Western banks. And it appears that some Russian gold was being held overseas. And the implication is that the head of Russia's central bank is kind of pro-Western and was willing to allow its gold to be held in London or New York, perhaps.
He should stay away from windows.
Should stay away from windows. There's been an epidemic of people falling out of windows in Russia. But Russia can produce more gold. And the bottom line is that this economist Glaziev is looking at creating sort of a new gold standard, or perhaps a digital currency backed not entirely by gold, but by gold and natural resources like oil, like potash, lithium, and then inviting nations from the global south, the southern hemisphere, African nations that are rich in rare earth minerals, rare earth metals, and other natural resources to participate, and then having this new stable coin, digital currency, backed by a basket of natural resources as a way of getting around the kind of sanctions that the United States is imposing on Russia and Iran and North Korea and Venezuela. It's like, why are we putting our money in their banks if they're just going to freeze our assets when we do something they don't like?
You don't want your assets frozen.
You don't. You don't. Prince Harry, just ask him.
Okay.
So anyway,
poor Harry.
The EAEU is designing this new currency based on gold partly, but also partly on oil and natural gas reserves. And again, Russia is a major player in that field. It's producing a lot more than it needs. And so it is just as a matter of charting an independent course. And this is not to say that what Russia is doing is good or right. It's not to say that Iran is good or right. Just set that aside for a moment. They're acting in their own best interest, and it's in their best interests to try to decouple from the Western world. So the globalists at Davos, at the World Economic Forum this past week, were on the one hand trying to, like Al Gore screaming about rain bombs, trying to scare us into giving up our right of self-determination to our intellectual and moral superiors. Let them tell us how we're supposed to live. But the global South and those nations aligned with Russia, China, India are saying, we don't think so. So when we're looking at what the World Economic Forum is doing and just the Great Reset is going to dominate our lives. Well, yeah, maybe here in the Western world, but the Chinese, the Indians, and China and India between them, that's 40% of the world's population. They're not going along with this.
I may have said this last week, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself. I'm old. I think what goes on in Davos has become a red herring.
Yes.
I think that there are other meetings that are not on the radar at all, we know nothing about, and these meetings are the ones where the true decisions are taking place. Because what goes on at Davos reminds me of what goes on at Bilderberg. It's a lot of, A-level, politicians, celebrities and media people and oligarchs who are all getting together for photo ops and, frankly, for doing illicit activities in hotel rooms.
Yeah.
The word at Davos is that the hookers were charging $2,000 a session, and that they were taking up entire hotels. So the activities there, it's like a giant just let's get together, pretend, and have some fun. In their definition of
and
fun.
I think the big clue there is that when you look at these people who are ostensibly debating the future of humanity, again, Al Gore, he told us it's an existential threat.
Well, he's been telling us that for decades.
Right. So if this is really the case and we're facing an existential threat that must be dealt with right now, you'd think there would be some spirited debate going on.
No, but there never is.
There never is. There is no dissension. It's a unified message at the World Economic Forum. If you do not agree with us, you do not get invited, because one of the things they mentioned in their 2-year global risk assessment, the near term is misinformation and disinformation. Greatest threat to global civilization are people who are sharing ideas with which we disagree. So, I thought that was really interesting that Brian Stelter, the former CNN host of Reliable Sources. Yeah, they're chairing a panel on misinformation and disinformation.
Hilarious.
It is hilarious. So you don't find people like Derek and Sharon Gilbert at Davos, which ironically enough is the neighborhood from which my mother's ancestors came from in the 17th century.
Well,
they lived in the vicinity of Davos.
Oh my goodness, how funny.
But they saw what was coming and they got out there in the 1690s.
Well, I'm so glad they did.
Me too.
So yes, I think what goes on at Davos is a distraction, but the fact is there's something real going on. If you take a look, and this is why you cannot just, and I know that you listening out there, you already get it. You cannot only look at Western sources. I look at what RT is saying. I look at what the Mer news group out of Iran is saying. I try to look at all of these alternative news sources that are all part of propagandizing their own population and saying things within the English version of their media outlet that is aimed at the West. If there's an English version of anything, remember, that's probably aimed at the West. And their native language version probably says something entirely different.
Sure, yeah.
But try to put yourself in the minds of those people, because folks who live in Iran, folks who live in Russia, folks who live in South America, folks who live in Canada, Australia, anywhere, Africa, they all want a peaceful life. They all want to raise their children in safety. They all want to know that they can get up tomorrow morning and feel free. They all are eligible for salvation.
Yes.
Jesus died for every one of them. And the way the news outlets work is to divide us. We should not be divided, especially as the body of Christ. The body of Christ is all over the world. It isn't just in the West.
Yeah.
It's all over the world. And the people who belong to the true body of Christ, those who are saved by grace, they may not worship in the way you do. They may not worship in the way Derek and I do. But they still have Jesus as their Savior. Pray for them, because many of those individuals are living under true oppression. It's not a micro-oppression that we seem to want to invent over here.
I like it.
It is true oppression.
Instead of microaggression, micro-oppression. Yeah.
Yes.
Trademark that.
Oh.
Yeah.
But we need to pray for them, and we also need to pray for the world leaders. Wouldn't it be great if the leaders of the world were guided by Yahweh instead of these fallen entities? Wouldn't that be nice?
It would. And I know that there are Christians who feel as though it's our mission to try to take over the governments of the world. I still lean toward
it's not
the temptation of Jesus, where he was taken up a very high, an exceeding high mountain, according to Matthew, which can only be Mount Hermon. If you're anywhere in the vicinity of Israel, it's got to be Mount Hermon, and shown the kingdoms of the world. And Satan offered them to him if Jesus would just bow the knee and give up dominion, his right to be, as a fully human being as well as fully divine, the right to be the king of the world. And Jesus did not do it. But all the kingdoms of the world, I interpret that to mean all the governments of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would suggest that continues down to this very day.
All the kingdoms would be all the tribal groups that are run by fallen angels. Which meant that Satan was saying, I'm the head of this council.
Yeah, I mean,
I can have every one of them bend the knee to you.
Jesus called him the prince of this world and the God of this world. So, yeah, that's who we are. That's who's behind the scenes, and the minions of that ruler. And there's probably competition. We've talked about this. The competition amongst the fallen who see their struggle not just against God, but against one another. Because once we take him down, then somebody's going to have to rule. So why not me? Just like politicians may conspire to take the White House or number 10 Downing Street from the opposition party, but they're fighting amongst themselves to see who gets to be the next PM or president. So
last year, the year of 3 PMs.
Well,
what a strange world it was last year.
That's what Paul was telling us when he wrote in Ephesians 6:12, we wrestle not against flesh and blood.
That's exactly it. And that's why Derek and I try to put ourselves in the minds of those who are running other countries and try to figure out why that person is making the choices he or she is. Ultimately, it's because that tribal group is being steered by a fallen entity. It's the consequence of the spiritual war. And that spiritual war has been going on at least since Eden and probably long before that.
That's why I kind of laughed. I actually did. I laughed out loud when I was reading comments by the CEO of BlackRock.
Larry
Fink.
Hey, whose name is Fink?
Yeah.
I mean, think about that.
Because he's at Davos, along with a delegation from the United States that includes our chief of the heads of 2 different intelligence services, plus the director of the FBI. Anyway, Larry Fink was talking about ESG investing, which is environmental social governance, an arbitrary set of guidelines guiding investment bankers to put money into investments that are, follow the principles of stakeholder capitalism, which is what the World Economic Forum is pushing. Stakeholder as opposed to shareholder capitalism.
Right.
No longer shall those who own the company actually direct the company's actions. Okay. It essentially turns companies into effective arms of the government.
Yes.
Yeah. Social considerations. Anyway, he said it's getting more and more difficult to invest along ESG lines. A number of states here in the U.S. led, I think West Virginia was the first, but a number of other states have also pulled all of their money out of BlackRock because they said this ESG investing is stupid.
It's a huge thing. It reminds me of when, Ben and Jerry decided they were going to be anti-Israel. And so all of these states suddenly pulled their retirement investments out of any organization that had anything to do with Ben and Jerry, because Ben and Jerry is part of a huge conglomerate.
Unilever.
Unilever, yes.
And Unilever wasn't really happy about that.
They were very upset.
Right. So Fink's comment was that this has become personal. For the first time in my career, this is personal, not business. They have demonized the idea of ESG. And that's what made me laugh, because I said, because ESG investing is fundamentally, getting back to our discussion of carbon, is fundamentally anti-human. You're wanting us to go back to a 16th century lifestyle where we're heating our homes with cow dung and peat moss because everything else is just too carbony. And even that'll be carbony. It's like, oh, look at all the soot coming out. No, you're just gonna have to freeze in the dark because everything else emits carbon. But again, carbon is the basis of life itself.
Yes, it is. So you cannot demonize yourself. Or can you?
Yeah. No, we're just demonizing this idea because it is a doctrine of demons. It is fundamentally anti-human, and Mr. Fink probably doesn't realize it, but I believe behind the scenes there are principalities and powers whispering this into the ears of people who think they're doing good.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'll take you back to Psalm 2.
Yep. Why do they rage and imagine a vain thing?
Yes, well, the Lord laughs with derision for now.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to stop laughing very, very soon, and he's all out of bubblegum.
Absolutely. Well, come quickly, Lord. That's what we look forward to.
Amen.
Well, this weekend on A View from the Bunker, it is another Iron and Myth discussion.
Oh, those are wonderful. Those are my favorites.
I've got a link at vftb.net. That's the website for the View from the Bunker interviews. There is a tab there that says Iron and Myth. You can look at, we've got 12 of those interviews now. That's where Pastor Doug Van Dorn, award-winning screenwriter, novelist Brian Godawa, and our friendly neighborhood PhD, Dr. Judd Burton, joined me. And this week we talked about demons. What are they? Are they substantially different from fallen angels? There seems to be some confusion amongst the body of believers because most of our churches don't teach angelology or demonology. Well, Judd does. Mm-hmm. At his Institute of Biblical Anthropology, you can get a course in study angelology, demonology, monsterology from a Christian perspective.
And you can look at blurry creatures.
Well, yes.
Yes. And get a T-shirt. But we want to remind you, if you are a big fan of Dr. Judd Burton, that this probably October, we haven't announced the actual dates yet, but we do plan on going to Turkey. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Burton is going with us, and I believe that Aaron Judkins is also going along.
They have been doing some great research into the Watchers' influence on Göbekli Tepe, which is why Göbekli Tepe is on the agenda. So we're waiting for final details from the tour company, Doug Hershey of Ezra Adventures. It is his company that is putting this together, but we'll have a formal announcement coming very soon. And then I'll pull back out the View from the Bunker interview I did with Doug, because we've got some great video from some of the sites that are on the tour, including the gates of hell.
Ooh, you'll want to put that at our on the app, so people can,
the interview that we did last year.
Yes,
because we rescheduled it when things kind of blew up in Turkey. Well, not in Turkey, but in Ukraine. But the tour company has told us that Turkey in 2022, despite what was going on the north side of the Black Sea, had a record year for tourists from Western countries, and many people in Ukraine and Russia wanting to move away from the areas where the fighting is taking place actually moved and relocated to Turkey.
Yeah, Turkey is actually very, very tourist friendly.
Yes.
They're encouraging Western visitors and Western money.
Yeah.
They want the dollar for now.
And they are spending a lot of money on their archaeological infrastructure, because they've got sites like Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, Pamukkale, and this Churches of Revelation,
right, that
are wonderful for tourist sites. But when you get down in the south around Göbekli Tepe and Haran, which is Abraham's hometown,
right,
those sites are as old. Well, no, they are way older than the pyramids in Egypt.
Oh, yes. And we're going to be staying in some wonderful hotels and maybe visit a couple of museums. So I think if you are interested in the Book of Revelation, if you're interested in Göbekli Tepe, or if you're interested in the history of the Ottoman Empire and how that affected Christianity.
The Hagia Sophia.
Yes.
Yeah.
You need to go to Turkey with us, and we will be announcing all of those dates and the costs, and they will be on our website very, very soon. Yeah,
those locations are just fantastic.
I know.
And getting those two guys to go, because they did a number of interviews on the Fringe Pop 321 program, Mike Heiser's program, about Göbekli Tepe about a year ago.
Yep.
And those are just awesome.
Yep.
So, yes, we've read Aaron Judkins' book. In fact, I interviewed Aaron about the book, The Guardians of Göbekli, for A View from the Bunker back in December. And fascinating stuff.
Yep. By the way, speaking of Dr. Heiser, we would just welcome your prayers for him. He is continuing to struggle, and Derek got to chat with him for a bit yesterday. So we just are praying that you will, that the Lord will heal him,
yes,
and that will take care of his family and get them through this crisis. Also for Lynn Tabbitt, Sean Tabbitt's wife, who is recovering from brain surgery and dealing with a whole lot of issues. So pray that she continues to recover. There are many others that frankly are in the body of Christ that we just... Judd Burton is one of them. He's still recovering from some life-threatening infections.
Yeah. And he is working to rehabilitate, and he is really
he's
really
getting buff.
He is, he is down to his. He said down
Fighting
to his
weight.
fighting weight, the weight that he carried when he was out in the field digging at Caesarea Philippi, Panias. So
he's going to be running up and down those hills, and you and I are going to be panting out of breath.
Yeah, well, that's why we got that treadmill over here in the corner of this room.
Yeah, the one with the dust on it.
I've been using it.
I've been using it too.
Got to get back into shape before we get to Israel.
Me too.
So, well, we thank you for giving us your time this week. And again, if you want to reach out and contact us, contact information at the website, pidradio.com, gilberthouse.org. And until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is an outreach of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, pidradio.com, Twitter @PID Radio, or by downloading our free app, pidradio.com/app or gilberthouse.org/app. Join us each week for our Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship.